Hey, welcome to another week of UTS Startups Confessions. I'm here with Harry.
Hello.
And I'm Dave, and you might remember me from way back. Hey, now I work in the startup community here, and I'm also working on something called Spark Festival with my colleague Harry. And we're here today to talk to you about that.
That's right. Now we are co-CEOs of Spark Festival, and this is our first official outing together as co-CEOs.
This is a hard launch.
So I thought we could do something a little different and interview each other.
Oh.
And we'll see how that goes. What do you think about that,
You
Dave?
put me on the spot, Harry. I thought I was asking the questions, but all right. We can play your game.
Very good.
Yes.
So tell us a bit about you.
All right. Hey, my name's Dave. I work literally around the corner here at a startup called Compass IoT, where we help road and transport professionals build better and safer cities and roads. As you can probably see, I'm in marketing and comms as well as partnerships, and so I love talking to people. I think I was born that way, and I could talk underwater, basically.
Excellent.
That's a little bit about me. Harry, tell us about you.
Well, I'm Harry Godber. I, like Dave, work in a startup and have for a couple of years. It's a slightly larger startup than it was when I joined now. We sold to private equity at the end of last year, which we're very fortunate to do in quite an unusual capital environment coming out of a pandemic. But prior to that, I worked in public policy and worked under both the Turnbull and Morrison governments in technology policy, as well as financial services and regulation. So sort of an unusual path to wind up in a startup, and even more unusual to end up in an event like Spark. But I guess that's the crux of Spark, isn't it? It's sort of for everybody.
It is, and it kind of brings so many different kinds of people together. People who've sort of, come through the ecosystem here in Sydney, like myself, people like you who've just worked in a whole bunch of other exciting worlds and found yourself here as well. But so Harry, it's my turn to ask another question, I've decided.
Go for it.
What is Spark Festival?
Good question, I'm glad you asked. Spark Festival is the largest startup-focused event in Australia. It's been running for about 7 years. About 40,000 people over the last 7 years have come together across investments, startup founders, startup teams, startups that were startups that have grown into scale-ups, as well as academics, people who work at hubs like Stone and Chalk, who are one of the foundation partners, and ACS, who are one of the key sponsors of Spark Festival this year.
Yep.
And come together to build the connective tissue that really makes a true startup ecosystem thrive. So ensuring that people get the right sorts of connections, the right sorts of access to knowledge and access to capital, and also the opportunity to share ideas and kind of promote Australia and promote New South Wales as a hub of entrepreneurial activity in the world. And I think if you think back to when Spark Festival started 7 years ago, which was sort of in the early days of the Turnbull era National Innovation and Science Agenda, venture capital investment, particularly in Australia, and attention paid to startups and spaces like this, those things didn't really exist to anywhere near the same extent to what they exist to today. And I think one of the key roles of Spark in this kind of new economy of entrepreneurship and startups and scale-ups is ensuring that we get the visibility that this community deserves. And that's among people who are key decision makers in government, people who are key decision makers in corporate partners, supply chains, corporate investors, and of course in the venture capital, private equity, seed funding, angel investment spheres, who do find this space a very familiar one to work in. I think that means it's my turn, doesn't it? So I'm going to ask you, why Spark Festival?
Oh, okay. So I'm glad you asked. I think for me, I first kind of fell into entrepreneurship, right? Like when I think it was 2014, I started working in a sort of social impact organisation called Batir, and at the time it was tiny. There was only 4 of us, and we were sitting around a table at something called The Hub in Darlinghurst. I'd never worked in a co-working space before, and I thought it was really weird. I kept meeting these people that said they were like pollinizers and activators, and I'm like, what is this space that I've fallen into? But I realized I was part of something so much bigger, and that was like all of these people with incredible ideas and making connections with each other and finding problems worth solving. And that's kind of where Spark finds itself. Like, it's about unifying all of these incredible thinkers and people in tech and people in innovation and doing all these incredible things and giving that some airtime. So you might go to Spark Festival and see an event all about robotics. You also might see an event straight afterwards that's all about social impact. You might then go to something that's all about clean tech and clean energy. And all of those things are kind of under the same umbrella, and Spark Festival is essentially just an amalgamation of all of these incredible events and experiences that you can go to and just get inspired and feel like you are part of something bigger, which we are. I think Sydney and New South Wales particularly is such an incredible environment to be an entrepreneur in. Like, we're sitting right in UTS Startups, right? Like, I think it's Australia's largest startup community. And I feel like it's only possible here in New South Wales. It's an incredible place. So Spark Festival is about, just covering all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing you've touched on, which is critical, is being part of the furniture, kind of creating the infrastructure that allows entrepreneurs to know that they can build businesses, that they can attract investment, that they can attract customers and channels, and that they can scale. And we're really lucky to be partnering with William Buck to bring Spark Festival to life this year. And they're one of a number of firms in the supply chain that can help founders understand what the opportunities are for them. And we're really lucky in Australia to have one of the best funded entrepreneurship environments from a kind of public policy perspective in the world. Things like the R&D tax incentive, where you get an enormous tax refund on pretty much all of your R&D activities as a startup. Things like grants through the Entrepreneurs Program, which have been quite successful over the past couple of years, and equally tax infrastructure, things like early stage investment companies, early stage venture capital limited partnerships, all of the types of things that a professional services firm can help you with as a startup. Those are the sorts of things that we would like to get more connectivity, more visibility around. And so they're probably the first of a number of professional services firms that we'll be partnering with over the coming year to try and bring all of that infrastructure to life for you as founders and as startup ecosystem participants. Yeah,
definitely. Whose go is it for a question?
I guess I answered my own question, so maybe it's yours.
Now I'm off Okay, so I'll ask a question. So you were talking about our incredible partners, which is great. We're also working with Atlassian and the Pledge 1% initiative, the Atlassian Foundation. And I guess, we're talking about innovation, tech, startups, but we're also talking about impact. So talk to us a little bit about that. Like, where does that fit in?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think the core of any investment ecosystem is impact, in a way. And that has never been more true than it is today, where every large investment firm in the world is thinking about ESG as part of their strategies when they go and look for prospects, when they go and evaluate a cap table. They're no longer just looking at your EBITDA. They're thinking about you as a going concern, where you have reputational impacts that could uplift you enormously or could cause significant risks for you. And I think that's partly out of regulatory settings, particularly in the EU, where you have to account for certain ESG targets, mandates. And so I think the spirit of Pledge 1%, which is to ensure that 1% of your work, 1% of your revenue, 1% of the equity that you generate as a company goes towards something that is ESG or that is impact related, is really strongly aligned with it, and is doing quite a lot to bring that mindset to Australian entrepreneurship, where it is becoming the norm overseas.
Yeah, definitely. Cool.
So to round out the sponsors who are supporting Spark this year, the most important is probably the federal government.
Yes.
We're really privileged to have the Federal Department of Industry, Science and Resources, which is Minister Ade Husick's department, sponsoring Spark. And we've also been incredibly fortunate to have the support of the New South Wales government over the past several years in establishing Spark and bringing it to scale. How do you, as someone who works in the startup ecosystem, view government? Because it's often quite a challenging black box to operate with.
Yeah, that's a great question for me, because we are in a B2G startup where our customers are the government, and we love them. So love the government. I think it's important to think about, I guess, like you were saying, the environment of support. And I think that starts at the top. And for us in Australia, we're super fortunate to have had over many years, I guess, the environment that's been created by a lot of policy and advocacy, but it has set us up. We've got incredible public institutions like UTS and the universities here, schools that are full of entrepreneurship programs and full of opportunities for people to find pathways, like you were saying as well, the R&D tax incentive and some different things that make it really important and possible to be an entrepreneur. And we need to keep reminding the government that startups are important, that we exist, that entrepreneurs are the future, that the problem solvers that are coming out of our ecosystem are, I guess, the future for this country. We could spend the rest of, the foreseeable future digging things up and selling them to people overseas, but I feel like Australia has so much more to give.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also wouldn't discount the value of digging things up and selling them, because owning the whole supply chain when it comes to critical minerals and the sorts of resources that are going to power the future clean tech economy are things that Australia has the comparative advantages to do really well in. And we've seen that from the multiplicity of startups that have grown into quite large companies in these spaces across Australia. Also in the space industry, where there are quite a lot of complementarities between space technology and even oil and gas. I remember when I launched the Australian Space Agency with then Minister Michaelia Cash, we did it at the Woodside Petroleum headquarters in Perth, where they had a NASA robot that they had pulled out of the space station program. And NASA was using this robot to go and do, it's like a humanoid robot. It looks like a person. It could shake your hand and everything. And they were using it to go and do repairs on the International Space Station. And once these robots got retired, Woodside took them and started using them to do repairs on oil and gas rigs where conditions were too hostile for humans to do it. And so that kind of the additionality that can come of investing in something like a moonshot, like an incredible space mission, that can have real world impacts for people in their everyday lives, that can enable the critical infrastructure that we all rely on as a nation. Those are things that really excite me about our ecosystem and about Spark as an opportunity to bring all those bits of the ecosystem together. What do you think, though, have been the biggest challenges you've seen in working in and around startups, particularly coming out of a university incubator environment? What do you think are the things that people need the most in New South Wales?
Customers. I think, maybe it's just me, but I think Australia is such an interesting and unique place. I think to make it here as an entrepreneur and as a newly forming company it's challenging in lots of different ways. I think globalizing is also really, really important because, again, it's about customers and finding your product market fit and finding the people that will pay you money for whatever it is that you do. And I think we're good at that. We're good at finding that. But I think every opportunity to do that better would be great.
And that customer sort of finding your product market fit and finding the right customers, those customers can look very different as a company progresses, right?
Absolutely.
And I imagine that you've been working a lot in the B2G space, but that probably wasn't always where your eye was when it came to value creation, right?
Correct. Absolutely. I've had a whole bunch of different stints in different companies, started a few of my own that were terrible. Some of them were okay and then failed. But it's a journey, right? But again, it's the safety of the community here in the ecosystem that enables you to try a few things out, see what sticks. And then, when you do find something that is really going somewhere, being able to pick up that momentum and run with it. Yeah,
in a way, all startup success stories have a huge amount of trial and error. One thing that one of my CEOs of the company I work in often says is that the success of a company often comes down to sort of 3 to 5 key decisions that you make in the life cycle of your scale up or your startup. And those can often be to completely change the way that the business model works and to change the market segments that you're addressing. And I think one of the things that Spark Festival and infrastructure like Spark and like UTS Startups is able to do is to allow people to socialize those ideas and to test things out, to not be afraid of failure, and to be in an environment where you can discuss crazy ideas and see what the possibilities of bringing them to life are.
Totally.
And so of the hundreds of companies that we've got participating in Spark Festival 2023 already, you never know what you're going to learn from anyone that you meet in a room, right?
And I've already learned, so just from chatting with people who are hosting events and putting stuff on, I'm learning a lot, and meeting some really cool people. Yeah, absolutely. It's my turn for a question,
Go for it.
I think we're almost out of time for this particular interview, but I just wanted to think about, so Spark started a little while ago now, 2016. So walk us through, we sort of know this because we've worked with Maxine a little bit, who's probably watching. Hey, Maxine. But where has Spark come from, and sort of what are the origins here?
Spark really was created as an event that was by the startup community for the startup community. And as I mentioned before, it was sort of at a time where there wasn't a lot of enabling infrastructure around. The centers of excellence, I suppose, in the startup ecosystem that we recognize now were in fairly early stages at that time, in the kind of 2015, 2016, 2017 economy. And while we've grown massively since then, Spark Festival has grown with us. Maxine Sharon, who many of you may know, has been an incredible leader of the Spark Festival over the past several years, and she's been very happily retained to give us advice on what to do, because so much of Spark's success has been on the relationships and the enthusiasm that she has brought to this program. But at its core, the mission of Spark, which is to provide connectivity across the innovation ecosystem, really has stayed the same throughout. And I think it's that sense of collaborative spirit that continues to bring event hosts and supporters back year after year.
Yep, absolutely. So in wrapping up, Harry, I guess we've got to make sure our awesome audience in the room here, as well as everyone watching online on LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook or wherever you are. By the way, we appreciate you. Thank you for listening to us both talk for this long. So what do people need to know specifically about Spark this year? So it's happening from the 30th of October till the 4th of November.
That's correct.
What else?
It's 1 week of jam-packed activities. You can go on to sparkfestival.co and see the full program. We've got easy sign-ups via Humanitics and elsewhere on the websites, which you can click on the big program button to see. And we've got some really interesting things planned. So if you're a founder and you're looking at opportunities to grow your business and want to find the sorts of places that are going to help you with that connective tissue, you can go into any of the innovation hubs that are hosting open days. Every morning, I think there's a breakfast on with a different hub that you can go to. We've got a fantastic opening celebration where Spark, in collaboration with Murray over there, will be helping launch the Startup Muster report. When I was in government, Startup Muster was one of the only key data sources that we use to make decisions about the innovation ecosystem in Australia. And so we're really happy to see that incredibly valuable piece of data relaunch with the Startup Muster Report 2023. And there are, I think, still a couple of tickets left, although it sold out in almost 3 days. So if you are lucky, you could hop on to sparkfestival.co and nab whatever the last few tickets are. Be quick, because they might be gone very shortly. And then throughout the week, we've still got more events to announce. We'll be doing an incredible investment-focused event on the Tuesday evening that we'll launch soon, and you should look out for, where we'll be bringing along a couple of fantastic investors from some of the leading venture capital firms in Australia to come and talk about what the sorts of things are that you, as if you're a founder, might want to think about when it comes to how you approach pitching and how you approach finding the right people to work with and the right people to invest in. And we're also going to have a fantastic closing event on the 3rd of November in the evening, where we'll have a surprise guest for you to talk about some very interesting policy-related things that we'll be sort of doing a bit of a wrap-up to Spark. And in between, an incredible number of opportunities to engage in different industry verticals. One of my favorites is on the Friday morning. We've got something on longevity in care tech, which our good friend Anne-Marie Elias is running with Abby Bloom. And Anne-Marie has been on the Spark board for quite some time and is an invaluable source of wisdom and enthusiasm for you and me.
Definitely.
What's your favourite event on the program?
I saw one pop up for parents and kids as well who are into gaming. So if you're a parent and a kid both into gaming, there's an event for you. I'm like, I love that. I want to get amongst that stuff.
Are you on the parent or kids side?
That's funny. Lots of other awesome things that people can get amongst as well. But yeah, I think we've run out of time, Harry.
I think we have run out of time, but I think we've got all the key things across. I know that you were much more prepared than me and actually had a list of questions, which I probably completely railroaded you off.
Spark is who we are, Harry. It's all good.
That's right.
Yeah.
But key message, head on to sparkfestival.co. We would love to see you there. There are so many exciting events. Get amongst it.
Cool. And thank you for watching.